All right, guys, today is Monday, August 7th, 2023. So there's been quite the development in Steve's 55 Chevy project here. So you guys that's been following the series, if you caught the video or if you did not catch the video Friday, you saw me run into trouble with this flipped leaf spring crap that they did to the back of the car. The fill tube is touching the frame, and it's about a ½ inch or more from going in straight to the gas fill part of the tank. Also, when you start jacking the car up, the shackle comes in contact with the fill tube, or it would if it was hooked up. So I got two issues with one thing here. I don't know what their thought was on that. All that stuff should have been mocked up, and that would have prevented that. But anyway, so big mess here. And so there is the option of spacing up the back of the car between the body and the frame. And when you do that, it's going to make the bumper be a little bit lower. So I'd have to slot the holes in the frame to do that. Still not that big of a job. But when you go to spacing stuff up like that, it usually puts the other body panels out of whack, especially on a hardtop with no B-pillar. So it's going to be, it's a crap show. That's putting it bluntly. This is a crap show. So I told Steve, because there's other issues, if it was my car, I'd put another chassis under it. So he found in where the town he lives in, or close to it, there's a guy that has a 56 four-door sedan. I think it's a Bel Air. Now, it's been a parts car. There's no front clip. There's no engine, no transmission. I think one door's gone. I'm not even sure if there's a deck lid on it, but it has the chassis under it. 55 and 6 take the same chassis. 57, it's pretty much kind of the same chassis, except the front frame horns are different for 57, but 55 and 6 is the same. However, with a hardtop like this car, it has two extra body mounts that a sedan car doesn't have. But he's getting a pretty decent deal on the chassis. It's not a smoking deal by any means. It's missing the rear axle. It's missing a leaf spring. It's missing all the spindles, hubs. I think he said there's one A-arm on it. The guy has some stuff there in some tall grass. Looks like a rear end, and like they cut the whole front off of a 55 frame. And it looks like all the hubs and A-arms and all that stuff's there. But anyway, he gave Steve a price, but I don't think it comes with the other stuff to make it a complete chassis. So I really don't understand the theory on that. But anyway, the chassis appears to be good. The car has been on blocks for decades, like concrete blocks. It's not in the dirt. So anyway, I told him to check a couple of areas on the chassis to make sure there's no rust in the chassis. I can tell you one of the big places for rust on a chassis on a Tri-5 is right where the frame kicks up for the rear axle. That bottom corner right there is pretty prone to rotting out. So I had him look at both sides, and he said it's good. I also had him cross measure the front frame horns to make sure they're good. He said it does look like the very end of it has a little bent edge to it or something, but I think it's square from what he said. So anyway, he measured the back there. The back is good. But anyway, he's going to go ahead and get the car, and I'm going to take the chassis out from under it. And anyway, to me, it's the best way to go. So I'll just take the two hardtop body mounts off of this frame and put on that sedan frame. I done the exact same thing to my hardtop. That was a 55 four-door sedan chassis under this car, and I put two body mounts on it for the hardtop. So it's not a big deal. Now, that's not the only reason we're doing that. This frame has some mega issues. We don't know the history of this chassis, but I can tell you right now, this has been cut. It's all crushed in right there. This frame rail right through here and up in pretty far, this is bulged out, like it's half circled up here. It's supposed to be straight. There's a cut seam here. So this corner has been put on off another car, and it is not straight. Like the patch is this, and there are other pieces this way. So it's not square, we'll say. So what I think they done is they went in there and they chopped that and it sprung because the car's had an impact back here, and it's probably why we're having clearance issues off the fill tube. I don't know 100%. The other thing that a problem is they don't have two of the body mounts in the car, and there's a big reason. Because that left kick up that goes over the rear axle is an inch over. So there you go. You got a chassis problem. When I climbed under this car the other day to check the ball joints on it, I noticed that there was a cut line on the frame and it had been welded. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's too dark, but this, if I can feel it, this is all been cut and welded right here. So this front frame horn has either been replaced. I'll know more once I get out from under the car, but I don't know if the car took an impact in the rear there and then they rear-ended somebody up here. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But all I can tell you is that frame is not square. It's jacked up. So I suggested him to get another chassis. Now he's not going to buy some fancy aftermarket Art Morrison Roadster Shop chassis. That's just not in the budget, period. So he found a 56 and he's going to get the whole car for a decent, reasonable price. And we're just going to use the chassis from under it. But I'll have to put the two body mounts in. Now that's not the only problem with the chassis. There's other issues. When they flip the leaf springs to the inside, now the shock location is not correct. The angle of the shocks is so different that I was going to have to put a shock bar in, which he bought two of them. And when we tried to put them both in, you could get your hand in between them. That's how bad the frame rail's bent out. I was going to have to cut these ears off for the shock mounting on the uppers and clock them differently and move them so the shocks went in line on there, because right now the angle is so off it would end up with metal on metal at the bushing area. So there's that issue from flipping the leaf springs in. The other thing they did is they did not put the fuel line on the car when the body was off. So Steve and I put a pre-bent stock replacement fuel line, 3/8 fuel line on the car, and you have to put them on when the chassis is off, or the body's off the chassis. We got it on there, but it's pretty jacked up now. It's all bent and tweaked and kinked. It's not kinked, but it just looks terrible. So it's cobbled, we'll say. So if I get the body off the frame, I can remove that fuel line, get it bent back like it's supposed to be, and place it on the frame in the correct location. The other thing they did, when they put the brake lines for the rear on the car, the rear brake lines, they used two long sticks from the parts store with a union in the middle. Nothing wrong with using a union in between your brake lines. I've done it for years. The problem is they put the union directly in the middle above the body mount. You can't get to the union. So if I bleed the brakes on the car and there's a leak at that union, I have no way to access it. So another not very well thought out idea. Probably they were trying to hide it, but at the end of the day, it's got to be serviceable. You know what I mean? So I don't even know if it's tight. With half the stuff done to this car, I wouldn't doubt that union's not even tight. So the other problem, Steve always had a problem with the vibration. So he put new tires on the car, it didn't fix it. His rims aren't bent, but it had a vibration going down the highway. When I was putting in the floor shifter, I was looking at the transmission crossmember set up in the car. This is a second generation F-body transmission crossmember, and if some of you don't know that, they will work on a Tri-5, and they have two humps on each side for dual exhaust. I've installed several through the years. They've gotten lately where they're kind of hard to find. I used to be able to get them from one salvage that I used to live by for like 20 bucks. So those days are gone, you know what I mean? But anyway, it has an F-body crossmember, transmission crossmember in it. They welded the L brackets to the frame. The problem is when I put an angle finder on the transmission, it is 7.5 degrees down. It's supposed to be 3. There's the vibration. 100%. That's your vibration problem. That's a long way. 7.5 degrees from 3. 3 is where it's supposed to be. 3 degrees down on your tail shaft. That's a lot. That's a whole bunch. Like that might be an inch. That's bad. So there's that problem. So the ears need to be cut off. What I had done is just stacked a bunch of spacer crap up in there. Again, having to cobble it up. So there's lots of issues. Now, the other side of this car in the shape that it's in right now, there's no front and rear bumpers on it. If you was going to pull a body off a frame, you'd have to pull the bumpers off. There's no bumpers on the car. There's not even any bumper brackets on the car. The I Did It tilt steering column is sitting in there. It's not bolted to the box. There's no brake fluid in the master cylinder, and there's no brake lines hooked up here. The emergency brake stuff's not on the car. The gas snake's not hooked up to the car. Installed, well, it's mocked up, but none of that stuff's hooked up, and there's no fuel in it. So there's no rear shocks on the car. So at this point, right now, if the chassis is going to be changed, it's the best time because none of that stuff's hooked up. If we decide to do a chassis install later, all that stuff will have to be unbolted and removed, and then you're going to have a leaky brake stuff and gas leak and all that stuff, you know, taking things apart just to change the chassis. So I suggested it, and I did not try to pressure Steve into changing the chassis. I told him my exact words, if this was my car, I would change the chassis. What that's going to do is get rid of all the past sins and all of the half-ass work that's been done to this car. So, and it'll get it back right. The paint job they done on the chassis is not that great. It may be spray painted. I don't know. I don't know that for sure. It's just not a very good paint job. They pretty much painted suspension and all on the car all at the same time. So I also have to rebuild the entire front end. We're doing ball joints, A-arm bushings, shocks, all that stuff. Idler arm bearing conversion kit, which he bought the whole idler arm with the bearings already in it from Woody's. So, you know, a lot of the stuff has to come apart. Anyway, so to me, it's the best way to go. And this car will be nice at the end of that road. So anyway, I'm at the point right now that I'm kind of stuck because I can't really bolt anything else on the car because if I'm pulling the body off the frame, I want the car pretty light. I'm going to go ahead and leave the doors on it, but I've got both door glasses and everything out, so I'll take the glass in the house. I am going to go ahead and pull the front clip off the car, and you know, doing that, if I'm going to pull the front clip off, I'm going to go ahead and slot that hood hinge on the right side of the car so I can get that corner of that hood to go down. If you caught that very first video of front end sheet metal alignment, the hood is almost perfect. The front end's almost perfect set up on the car. That's all it needs to be dialed in. So if I got to have the hood off, it's not going to take that long just to pull the hinge off and just slot the holes a little bit with a die grinder, and then, you know, I just need the hinge to drop just a little bit. I did drop it when I did the front end alignment, the sheet metal alignment, but there's not a whole lot of room there. So it just needs like 1/8 of an inch probably, and that hood would be nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that if I have to pull that off. But I am going to pull the front fenders off the car because, for one, they'll be out of my way, especially when I do, you know, taking front end stuff off and all that. It's just less things hanging up in the air on my little rig I set up out here with concrete blocks and 4x4 posts. I have done a bunch of body and frame swaps here at my house, at this location in that driveway. So I can do that. This will end up getting the leaf springs back in the stock location, but it's also going to get rid of a bent frame, and that's the perfect fix. So most likely I will just build new L brackets for the cross member because those are welded to the frame. I think they're welded if I remember right. They may be bolted, I'm not 100%, but they did put them on there wrong. So the easy fix was just to spacer it up. So I'll either take those L brackets off or I'll build new ones and get that at the proper 3 degrees down like it's supposed to be, and get the fuel lines on it, the brake lines on it, all that stuff. So I'm basically going to restore an entire chassis before I take this one off the frame. But that will work out awesome. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I kind of thought about today, maybe I should go ahead and put this back in here, but at the end of the day, I kind of like the idea of once I get the body back on the frame, I'll be able to see, I'll have more area because I got to build a bracket to bolt to the body for this, for support up here. You know, right now there's no support, and he's got the electric gas door, so that fill tube has to come out and go down to the tank. So I'm going to have to weld an L bracket to this, and most likely I'm going to have to drill a hole and put a bolt and a nut on it on the back of this, or if I can get up in there, I'll weld a bracket. But that needs support, you know, about in the middle up in here on the body, so it's not just, you know, floating in there and you know, screwed with a hose clamp up here with a piece of hose to that little filler neck thing on this gas fill stuff. So I think that's the best way to do it. Now when I go back in to weld that in, I can use my welding blanket and just put it up there over the top of that stuff so no welding sparks get on the new paint that'll be on the chassis. And we're not doing anything crazy to the chassis. I'm not putting an X center in it like I did my hard top, and I'm not plating in all the front, smoothing it and all that stuff. We're basically just cleaning it up and painting it. But, you know, like the top of the frame rails, if they've got some bad spots in them, I'll probably go ahead and putty them up, and because I got to paint it anyway, you know what I mean? Trying to make it look clean, especially when the hood's up, because you do see a lot of the chassis on these cars when the hood's open. You know, a lot of that frame's exposed up here, so I definitely want all this up here to look nice in paint. I don't just want to paint it with, you know, pitting, rust pitting, and dings and that type of crap. I can put some putty on there, block it down, and prime it, sand it, and paint it. So it's going to be a damn nice car when it leaves here. I promise you that. And it's not going to have a vibration. The other side of it is the rear end. The leaf spring perches are welded, you know, because the leaf springs were flipped, so the leaf spring perches were moved over more in on the rear. So now those leaf spring perches have to be removed, and another set. I don't know if I can get them off there without tearing them up, you know, and getting it all out of square. So probably just have them get another set of leaf spring perches. So anyway, it's a big, huge mess, but this is just part of it. When you get an old car, you don't know what you're getting, you know what I mean? And then you take it to a shop that you kind of feel like they know what they're doing, and then you get stuff back like I've been showing you. So, big time job I got to do on this car now. This turned into a really, really big job, and you know, that's less time I have to work on my wife's 4-door now. So this is going to take, I don't know how long to get this dialed in and get it all finished out, but it's, to me, the best way to go. And it's going to take the car from being just an okay car to a knockout. So that's what needs to be done. Now, I want to talk about something else here. I've got several subscribers. Every time I post a video, if it's not of the 4-door, somebody's got to make a complaint. All they want to see is me working on the 4-door. I don't know what the damn difference is between working on this 55, or that 55. What difference does it make? But I got to tell you, you got to have money to build an old car. And I need a lot of parts for that 4-door. So I have to do work to be able to fund that other project. I don't make a lot of money on YouTube like some of the other channels where they can just get their monthly income from YouTube and go out and buy a whole nother project car. I am way from that. So anyway, I have to survive, basically. So if you don't like watching the other videos on these other 55s, I don't know what to tell you. Priorities, man. Adult priorities. So that is your update on Steve's 55. And I've already cleaned a spare bedroom out in the house because I'm taking all the front clip off the car, and that's where all that stuff's going. And there's going to be more stuff that goes in there. But at least now I have the room in the house to properly store that stuff out of the weather. So anyway, it's going to be a big job, man. So anyway, if you were enjoying Steve's series on his car, you're really going to enjoy it now because there's going to be a lot more work to it. So strap in, stay tuned, and better go get you a case of popcorn. I say that a lot, but you're really going to need a case of popcorn in this case. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.